Welcome to the world of 40k, where orcs kill you with the power of imagination. There's 4 Satans, and no one is happy. Let's get into it. Warhammer 40k, the universe, there's a lot. There's like 30 years of lore built up into this one tabletop game. I'm going to kind of do a really terrible introduction into said universe. And when starting to talk about this universe, there's a few main important things you got to talk about. The first being the warp. Now, what is the warp? Well, think of it as hell, but like a Lovecraftian eldritch horror type of hell. You see, every form of emotion goes into the warp. Every thought of happiness, sadness, all of it goes to the warp and becomes material but unmaterial at the same time. And that's where the kind of Lovecraftian eldritch horror type deal takes place, because everything is but isn't at the same time. So the warp is often also called the immaterium. Now, in the immaterium or the warp is a force known as chaos. And when you think to compare chaos to something you might already know, think of it as an evil version of the Force, a lot more like Lovecraftian or eldritch. And chaos has 4 gods behind it, those 4 Satans I mentioned earlier. Those chaos gods are Khorne, the god of violence and war; Nurgle, the god of disease and decay; Tzeentch, the god of knowledge and change; and Slaanesh, the god of excess and pleasure. Now, with these gods, they're the most eldritch part of Warhammer 40k, because they kind of don't really care about anything but themselves. They don't care if humans are killing other humans or aliens are killing other aliens. Or in this universe, they're called Xenos. That's just a term that you'll have to get used to if you plan on getting into the universe of 40k, is that aliens are called Xenos, and that's just how it is. And they only really care about one other thing that isn't them, and that's the Emperor of Mankind. Now, what makes the Emperor of Mankind so special is that he's what's known as a psyker. Now, what psykers are these people that can take that chaos energy from the warp, manifest it in their minds, and turn it into basically space magic. And the Emperor of Mankind, he is a big psyker, super powerful psyker, like Super Saiyan God Goku level psyker. And so when the Emperor is at the height of his being, like he's just taken over all of humankind, he spread humankind across millions of worlds and just created 18 sons known as the Primarchs. That's when the Chaos Gods decided no, and decided to spread out his Primarchs across the galaxy, which created the Great Crusade, as the Emperor helped spread his influence and find his sons. And of course, after finding all of his sons, the Chaos Gods weren't exactly happy about that. So they influenced the Emperor's favorite son, known as Horus. And through Horus, they were able to turn 8 other Primarchs to turn against the Imperium and the Emperor specifically. And this was called the Horus Heresy. And so basically what it boiled down to is Horus and 8 other Primarchs fighting against the Emperor and the 9 loyal Primarchs in this giant war that lasted about 7 years. And at the end of it, the Emperor was fatally wounded, is now stuck in his golden throne, being kept barely alive by sacrificing thousands of psykers every day. That's right, 1,000 people are sacrificed every day to keep the Emperor alive, but barely. And I think one of the most important parts about the 40k lore when it comes to the human side is the Horus Heresy event. And there's actually a big long book series still being written about it. So there's a lot of details that eventually I would like to go over, but that's for a different time. And now another big event I want to talk about is the discovery of the Necrons. Now, the Necrons are basically, think of them as Terminators, but even more scary. You see, the Necrons got into a fight with what's known as the Old Ones, these are super old and super powerful aliens that were basically immortal. And at the time, the Necrons were known as Necrontyr, but they were dying because their planet was just trash. It was highly irradiated, highly diseased, and when the Necrontyr asked the Old Ones for help, the Old Ones were like, fuck off. We ain't helping. So this turned into a huge thing called the War in Heaven. Necrons were tricked by another immortal race called the Catan, and that also hated the Old Ones, and there's a lot more to it, but basically in the end, the Necrons won. After winning, they shattered the Catans and used these godlike beings as fuel for their weapons, which is just lovely. And then they decided, well, let's go to sleep for a few million years. And then after a few million years, a human, exploring, decided to touch a glowing green button and woke up all the Necrons. And now that Necrons are angry because they're like, hey, what are all these young races doing here? We're in charge. And so now the Necrons are trying to reclaim all their home worlds, and everyone is still fighting each other. And I think the last thing I want to talk about the lore is basically what makes this universe so appealing is, one, there's so much of it. Like the tabletop game that 40K is based off of, it's been around for over 30 years, still going strong. And the lore is written in such a way that you can tell all sorts of different stories in it, and also that there's no real bad guys. You may think, oh, I'm a human, so humans must be the good guys, right? Wrong. There are no good guys in Warhammer 40K. Everyone is some point a level of evil. And that's kind of the fun part about it, is that there's no real good guys. Maybe arguably the Salamanders, who are a Space Marine Legion that I like to talk about later. It's just a whole universe of bad people, and that's what makes it so fun, is that you got orcs that just want to kill and fight everything because orcs is best, and they talk in a Cockney accent. And you got the Eldar, who are space elves, are just trying not to go extinct. And you got, the humans being religious and xenophobic because, well, you gotta praise the God Emperor, and all these aliens are killing us, so why would we want to trust them? Because they're just going to kill us, so we gotta kill them before they kill us. With all that, you also have room for all sorts of different stories, because you got the standard giant battle stories, you got horror, you got thrillers, you got mystery, and it's like you got so much to jump into the lore, and you'll get as much back as you put into it, which is probably the great thing about 40K lore. And I'm actually really excited to talk to you more about the lore and just 40K in general, because eventually I would like to talk about the hobby side of it and playing the game, to show more about Warhammer and 40K specifically, because I don't know much about the fantasy side. Sorry, Age of Sigmar people. And I think that's just the great part about it, is that there's just so much to share. It's motivated tons of people, including me, that just want to talk about it, and I can't wait to. So I hope to see you in a future video. I know this was terrible, but I hope you kind of get an idea of what kind of universe this is. So until next time, may the Emperor's light protect.